What this hungry little black girl told the judge in court saved her mother from a fate worse than death. In a moment of desperation, a single mother's choice turns into a courtroom drama that will leave you breathless. You won't believe what this child said to the judge, defying all expectations. It's not what you think. Warning: this story will change your perspective forever. Welcome, enjoy, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Monica Thompson's fingers trembled as she slipped the small jar of baby food into her worn coat pocket. The fluorescent lights of Save Mart buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the nearly empty aisles. It was almost closing time, and the night manager's footsteps echoed ominously from the next aisle over. She glanced down at her daughter, Lily, who sat quietly in the shopping cart, her big brown eyes heavy with fatigue. At 7 years old, Lily was small for her age, her second-hand clothes hanging loosely on her thin frame. Monica's heart clenched. How had it come to this? Just 6 months ago, everything had been different. Monica had a steady job as a receptionist at a local dentist's office. Their tiny apartment was always warm, and Lily's laughter filled every corner. But then, Dr. Hendricks retired, selling the practice to a younger dentist who brought in his own staff. Monica found herself jobless, with bills piling up and no savings to fall back on. She'd tried everything: job applications, food banks, even pawning her grandmother's wedding ring. But in the unforgiving streets of Chicago, a single mother without a college degree was just another statistic. The temp jobs barely covered rent, and Monica watched helplessly as Lily grew quieter, her once bright eyes dulling with each skipped meal. Tonight, after another failed job interview and an empty refrigerator at home, Monica had made a choice she never thought she'd face. Just this once, she told herself. Just to get through the week until her next paycheck. As she pushed the cart towards the checkout, a flicker of movement caught her eye. The night manager, Mr. Grayson, was watching her, his bushy eyebrows furrowed in suspicion. Monica's heart raced. She could feel the weight of the stolen baby food in her pocket, heavier than any burden she'd ever carried. "Evening, Miss Thompson," Mr. Grayson called out, his voice echoing in the empty store. "Doing some late-night shopping?" Monica forced a smile, her hand instinctively moving to cover her pocket. "Just picking up a few things for Lily's lunch tomorrow," she replied, her voice sounding strained even to her own ears. She fumbled with her wallet at the checkout, painfully aware of Mr. Grayson's eyes on her back. As the cashier rang up her meager purchases, a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and a bunch of nearly overripe bananas, Monica's mind raced. She could put the baby food back. There was still time. But then Lily's small voice broke through her panic. "Mommy, I'm hungry," she whispered, tugging at Monica's sleeve. In that moment, Monica made her decision. She paid for her items, the stolen jar of baby food burning a hole in her pocket. As she pushed the cart towards the exit, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe they hadn't noticed. Maybe they'd make it home, and tomorrow would be better. The automatic doors slid open, and a gust of cold Chicago wind hit her face. 1 step, 2 steps. Freedom was just yards away. "Miss Thompson?" Mr. Grayson's voice rang out behind her. "I'm going to need you to come back inside." Monica froze, her world crumbling around her. As she turned, she saw not just Mr. Grayson, but 2 police officers stepping out of a patrol car. The jar of baby food felt like a ticking bomb in her pocket. Lily looked up at her, confusion and fear clouding her young face. "Mommy, what's happening?" Monica knelt down, her eyes level with her daughter's. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, fighting back tears. "Everything's going to be okay." But as the officers approached, their faces grim in the harsh parking lot lights, Monica knew that nothing would ever be okay again. The precinct buzzed with late-night activity, a cacophony of ringing phones, shuffling papers, and muted conversations. Monica sat on a hard plastic chair, her hands cuffed in front of her, the reality of her situation sinking in like a stone in her stomach. Officer Jenkins, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes that contrasted sharply with her stern demeanor, sat across from her, filling out paperwork. "Full name?" she asked, not looking up from her form. "Monica Lynn Thompson," Monica replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced at the clock on the wall, 11:45 p.m. Lily would be scared, alone with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Castillo. The thought made Monica's chest tighten with anxiety. As Officer Jenkins continued with the booking process, Monica's mind raced. One mistake, One moment of desperation, and now everything was falling apart. The flash of disappointment in Mr. Grayson's eyes, the pitying looks from other customers as the police led her away. It all replayed in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. "You get one phone call," Officer Jenkins said, finally looking up from her paperwork. "Is there someone who can take care of your daughter?" Monica nodded, fighting back tears. "My neighbor, Mrs. Castillo. She's with Lily now, but she can't keep her for long. She's not well." "Officer Jenkins." Expression softened slightly. "Make your call. We'll figure something out for the girl." With trembling fingers, Monica dialed a number she knew by heart. After 3 rings, a groggy voice answered. "Hello? Mom," Monica choked out, her composure finally cracking. "I need your help." 20 minutes later, Monica sat in a holding cell, her mother's words echoing in her ears. The disappointment, the anger, the reluctant agreement to take Lily, it all swirled together in a maelstrom of guilt and shame. As the night wore on, Monica curled up on the narrow bench, her thoughts turning to Lily. Would her mother tell her the truth? How would Lily handle this separation? The questions tormented her, sleep remaining elusive as the hours ticked by. Morning brought no relief. Monica was led to a small room where she met her court-appointed attorney, a harried-looking man named David Greenberg. "Ms. Thompson," he said, shuffling through her file. "Shoplifting is usually a misdemeanor, but given your prior record..." Monica's heart sank. The speeding ticket from last year, the warning for selling homemade crafts without a permit, small infractions that now loomed large. "They're pushing for felony retail theft," Greenberg continued. "If convicted, you're looking at a possible prison sentence." The word prison hit Monica like a physical blow. But my daughter," she stammered. I can't leave her." Greenberg's expression was sympathetic but resigned. "I'll do what I can, but you need to prepare yourself. This isn't going to be easy." As Monica was led to the courtroom for her initial appearance, her mind whirled with terrifying possibilities. Foster care. Her mother, already struggling with her own health issues, trying to raise a young child. Lily, growing up without her mother, believing she had been abandoned. The courtroom doors loomed before her, heavy and imposing. Monica took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. She had to be strong, for Lily, for their future. Whatever came next, she would face it head on. But as the bailiff opened the doors and the hushed murmur of the courtroom washed over her, Monica couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a battle she was ill-equipped to fight. The holding cell was quiet, save for the occasional echo of footsteps in the corridor outside. Monica sat on the edge of the thin mattress, her eyes fixed on a small photograph clutched in her hands. It showed a younger, happier version of herself, arms wrapped around a toddler Lily at the beach. The memory of that day, warm sun, Lily's delighted squeals as the waves tickled her toes, felt like it belonged to someone else's life now. Monica's mind drifted back to the day Lily was born. She had been so young, barely out of high school, terrified and alone in the delivery room. But the moment they placed Lily in her arms, red-faced and squalling, Monica had made a silent vow. She would give this child everything: love, security, a future full of possibilities. For a while, it seemed like she might actually keep that promise. There had been struggles, of course. Sleepless nights with a colicky baby, juggling part-time jobs while studying for her associate's degree. But there had also been joy. Lily's first steps, first words, the pride of hanging her finger paintings on the fridge. Monica closed her eyes, remembering the day she landed the receptionist job at Dr. Hendrick's office. It had felt like a turning point. Finally, a steady paycheck, health insurance, even a small savings account. She had started to dream bigger, maybe a little house with a yard, summer camps for Lily, even setting aside money for college. But life, Monica had learned, had a way of upending even the most careful plans. Dr. Hendrick's retirement had been sudden, the new owner's decision to bring in his own staff even more so. Monica had found herself adrift, her carefully constructed stability crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. The last 6 months flashed through her mind in a blur of rejected job applications, past due notices, and Lily's increasingly worried eyes. "I'm sorry, we've gone with another candidate," Email felt like another nail in the coffin of her dreams. The temp jobs, data entry, call centers, even a brief stint as a night janitor barely kept them afloat. Monica's gaze drifted to the stark cinderblock walls of her cell. How had it come to this? She thought of the jar of baby food, such a small thing to risk everything for. But in that moment at the store, seeing Lily's hollow cheeks and remembering the empty kitchen cabinets at home, it had seemed like her only choice. A fresh wave of shame washed over her. What kind of mother resorts to stealing? What kind of example was she setting for Lily? The voices of doubt that had plagued her for months grew louder. Maybe her mother had been right all along. Maybe she wasn't cut out for this. No. Monica shook her head, forcing the thoughts away. She couldn't afford to fall apart now. Lily needed her to be strong, to find a way out of this mess. But how? The public defender's words echoed in her mind. Felony charges, possible prison time. The thought of Lily growing up without her, of missing years of her daughter's life, was unbearable. Monica stood up, pacing the small cell. There had to be a way. Maybe if she explained her situation to the judge, showed them she was a good person who had made a desperate mistake. But even as the thought formed, she knew it was a long shot. How many other defendants had stood before the court with similar stories? She thought of Lily, probably scared and confused, staying with her grandmother. Monica's relationship with her own mother had always been strained, full of criticism and disappointment. The thought of Lily enduring that, without Monica there to shield her, made her heart ache. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the small, barred window, Monica made a decision. No matter what it took, no matter what she had to do, she would find a way back to her daughter. She would prove to everyone, the judge, her mother, and most importantly, to Lily, that she was worthy of being called Mom. Monica looked down at the photograph once more, tracing Lily's smiling face with her finger. "I'm coming home, baby," she whispered. "I promise." With renewed determination, Monica prepared herself for the day ahead. Whatever challenges the courtroom held, she would face them. For Lily, for their future, for the promise she had made all those years ago. The Cook County Courthouse loomed before Monica, its imposing stone facade a stark reminder of the gravity of her situation. She took a deep breath, smoothing down the borrowed blouse her public defender had scrounged up for her appearance. It was slightly too large, making her feel even smaller as she climbed the worn steps. Inside, the courthouse bustled with activity. Lawyers in crisp suits hurried past, their briefcases swinging. Anxious defendants huddled with family members, their whispered conversations creating a constant low hum. Monica felt adrift in the chaos, acutely aware of her solitude. Her public defender, David Greenberg, met her outside courtroom 305. His tie was slightly askew, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "Ready?" he asked, not quite meeting her gaze. Monica nodded, not trusting her voice. As they entered the courtroom, the smell of wood polish and musty law books enveloped her. She took her seat at the defendant's table, trying to ignore the weight of eyes on her back. "All rise!" the bailiff's voice rang out. "The Honorable Judge Robert Thompson presiding." Judge Thompson entered, his black robes swirling around him. He was older than Monica had expected, with steel gray hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. As he took his seat, Monica felt a flicker of hope. Surely he would understand. Surely he would see that she wasn't a criminal, just a mother pushed to desperation. The proceedings began, a blur of legal jargon that left Monica's head spinning. She caught phrases like felony retail theft and prior incidents, each one feeling like another nail in her coffin. When it was time for the prosecution to speak, a sharp-featured woman in a charcoal suit approached the bench. "Your Honor," she began, her voice crisp and confident. "The state views this as a clear-cut case of premeditated theft. Ms. Thompson's actions show a disregard for the law and for the property rights of others. Given her prior record, we believe a harsh sentence is not only justified, but necessary to deter future offenses." Monica's heart sank. The prosecutor's words painted her as a habitual criminal, someone who chose to steal out of greed rather than desperation. She wanted to stand up, to explain, to make them understand. But as she shifted in her seat, Greenberg placed a warning hand on her arm. When it was the defense's turn, Greenberg stood, shuffling his notes. "Your Honor," he began, his voice lacking the prosecutor's assurance. While we don't dispute the facts of the case, we ask the court to consider the circumstances. Ms. Thompson is a single mother, recently unemployed, with no prior felony convictions. The item in question was baby food, clearly intended for her child, not for resale or personal gain. As Greenberg spoke, Monica dared to glance at Judge Thompson. His expression remained impassive, offering no hint of his thoughts. When Greenberg finished his statement, the judge leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Monica. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice deep and resonant, "do you understand the charges against you?" Monica stood, her legs shaking slightly. "Yes, Your Honor," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "And how do you plead?" Monica hesitated, looking to Greenberg. He gave a small nod, and she turned back to the judge. "Guilty, Your Honor," she said, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. "But please, if I could explain—" "Ms. Thompson," Judge Thompson interrupted, his tone firm but not unkind. "This is not the time for explanations. That will come later, should we proceed to sentencing. For now, I'll accept your plea. We'll reconvene next week for a pre-sentencing hearing." With a bang of his gavel, it was over. Monica felt numb as Greenberg led her from the courtroom, his hand on her elbow guiding her through the crowd. Outside, in the busy hallway, she finally found her voice. "What happens now?" she asked, fighting to keep her composure. Greenberg sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Now, we prepare for the sentencing hearing. It's our chance to present mitigating factors, to show the judge why you deserve leniency. Character witnesses, proof of your efforts to find employment, anything that paints a fuller picture of your situation." Monica nodded, her mind already racing. Who could she ask to speak for her? Her former employer? Her neighbor? Mrs. Castillo? And Lily? The thought of her daughter sent a fresh wave of pain through her heart. Can my daughter be there?" she asked hesitantly. Greenberg's expression softened. "It's not typical, but it's not prohibited either. We'll discuss it. For now, go home. Spend time with your little girl, and Monica." He waited until she met his eyes. "Don't lose hope. Judge Thompson is tough, but he's fair. We still have a chance." As Monica descended the courthouse steps, the weight of the day's events settled heavily on her shoulders. 1 week. 1 week to gather the pieces of her life, to find a way to show the court that she was more than this one desperate act. 1 week to fight for her future, for Lily's future. The Chicago wind whipped around her as she started the long walk home, each step a silent promise to her daughter. Somehow, some way, she would make this right. Lily Thompson sat at her grandmother's kitchen table, pushing soggy cereal around in her bowl. The unfamiliar house felt too quiet, too still. Nothing like the cozy apartment she shared with her mom. Even the air smelled different, a mix of lavender air freshener and the musty scent of old furniture. "Eat up, child," her grandmother Eleanor said from the stove where she was brewing another pot of coffee. "Can't have you wasting away on my watch." Lily obediently took a small bite, but the cereal tasted like cardboard in her mouth. It had been 3 days since the police had taken her mom away. 3 days of confusion, worry, and a gnawing emptiness in her stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. "Grandma," Lily began hesitantly, "when is Mom coming home?" Eleanor's shoulders stiffened. She turned, her lined face set in a frown. "I don't know, Lily. Your mother has gotten herself into quite a mess. It might be a while." Lily's lower lip trembled. "But why? She didn't do anything bad. She was just trying to help me." Eleanor sighed, sitting down across from her granddaughter. "Sometimes, Lily, even when people think they're doing the right thing, they can make big mistakes. Your mother, well, she's always been impulsive. Never thinks things through." Lily wanted to argue, to defend her mom, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she asked, "Can we visit her?" "We'll see," Eleanor replied, her tone making it clear that the subject was closed. "Now finish your breakfast. We need to get you ready for school." School. The thought filled Lily with dread. Yesterday, her first day back since the incident, had been awful. She'd overheard whispers in the hallway, caught classmates staring and quickly looking away. Even Ms. Patel, usually so kind, had looked at her with pity in her eyes. As Lily got dressed in clothes that smelled faintly of mothballs, old things of her mother's that Eleanor had dug out of the attic. She thought about the night everything changed. She remembered her mom's tight smile in the store, the way her hands shook as she pushed the cart. Lily hadn't understood then, but she'd known something was wrong. Now, piecing together overheard conversations and her own memories, Lily began to grasp the reality of their situation. The missed meals, the whispered phone calls her mom thought she didn't hear, the growing pile of envelopes with red stamps that always made her mom's face go pale. It all started to make a terrible kind of sense. On the walk to school, Lily's mind raced. She thought about Joey Martinez, whose dad had gone away for a long time last year. He'd told her it was because his dad had done something bad, but that he was still a good person. Was that what was happening to her mom? The school day passed in a blur. Lily went through the motions, her thoughts far away. During lunch, she sat alone, picking at the sandwich her grandmother had packed. It wasn't like the lunches her mom made, with little notes and sometimes a small treat. This sandwich was plain, practical, like everything at her grandmother's house. As the final bell rang, Lily made a decision. She wouldn't just sit and wait. Her mom needed her, and she would find a way to help. Walking home, Lily spotted a poster stapled to a telephone pole. Justice for All, it read, advertising a free legal clinic at the community center. Lily didn't know exactly what a legal clinic was, but she knew it had something to do with the law, with helping people like her mom. That night, as her grandmother watched the evening news, Lily snuck into the kitchen. She found Eleanor's address book, and with shaking hands, copied down the address of the community center. Tomorrow was Saturday. She'd find a way to get there, to talk to someone who could help her mom. As Lily climbed into bed, she hugged her worn stuffed rabbit close. "Don't worry, Mr. Flopsy," she whispered. "I'm going to bring Mom home, I promise." In the darkness of her temporary room, surrounded by unfamiliar shadows, Lily closed her eyes and dreamed of home, of her mom's warm hugs, and of a world where families didn't get torn apart over a jar of baby food. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Monica sat beside her attorney, David Greenberg. A week had passed since her initial appearance, a week filled with sleepless nights and tearful phone calls to Lily. Now, as she waited for Judge Thompson to enter, Monica felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice. Greenberg leaned in, his voice low. "Remember, let me do the talking. Judge Thompson can be unpredictable, but he's fair. We've got some good character witnesses lined up. Mrs. Castillo is here, and your former employer sent a glowing letter. We've got a shot at probation." Monica nodded, trying to draw strength from his words. Her gaze drifted to the back of the courtroom, where Mrs. Castillo sat, her weathered hands clutching her purse. The sight of a familiar face was comforting, but it also intensified Monica's longing for Lily. They had decided against bringing her to the courthouse, not wanting to expose her to the harsh realities of the legal system. Now, Monica wondered if that had been a mistake. "All rise," the bailiff's voice rang out. The Honorable Judge Robert Thompson presiding. As Judge Thompson took his seat, his piercing blue eyes swept the courtroom. "We're here for the sentencing of Monica Thompson," he began, his voice carrying easily through the room. "I've reviewed the pre-sentencing report and the character statements submitted. Does the defense have anything to add before we proceed?" Greenberg stood. "Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Mrs. Elena Castillo to the stand." Mrs. Castillo's testimony was brief but heartfelt. She spoke of Monica's dedication as a mother, of late nights sewing costumes for Lily's school plays, of shared meals during hard times. "She's a good girl, Your Honor," Mrs. Castillo concluded, her accent thick with emotion. "She made a mistake, yes, but her heart is pure." As Mrs. Castillo stepped down, Monica felt a flicker of hope. Surely the judge could see that she wasn't a hardened criminal, just a mother pushed to desperation. The prosecutor rose next, her face impassive. While the defense paints a sympathetic picture, the fact remains that Ms. Thompson committed a premeditated act of theft. Her prior record, though minor, shows a pattern of disregard for the law. The state recommends the maximum sentence to serve as a deterrent to others who might consider similar actions. Monica's heart sank. The prosecutor's words seemed to suck all the air out of the room. She glanced at Greenberg, who was scribbling furiously on his legal pad. Judge Thompson leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Thompson, do you have anything you'd like to say before I make my decision?" Monica stood, her legs shaking. She had rehearsed this moment countless times in her cell, but now, faced with the reality of it, words failed her. "Your Honor, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, a commotion at the back of the courtroom interrupted her. The doors burst open, and a small figure darted down the aisle. "Wait!" a familiar voice cried out. "Please, you have to listen!" Monica's heart stopped. It was Lily. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as Lily ran to the front, her backpack bouncing against her small frame. Behind her, Eleanor appeared in the doorway, red-faced and out of breath. "Young lady," Judge Thompson's voice boomed, silencing the room. "This is highly irregular. Who are you?" Lily stood before the bench, her chin raised defiantly despite the tears in her eyes. "I'm Lily Thompson, Your Honor. Monica is my mom, and you can't send her away. You just can't." Monica wanted to run to her daughter, to sweep her into her arms and shield her from all of this. But she remained frozen in place, watching as Judge Thompson's stern expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Lily," he said, his tone gentler now. "I understand you're upset, but there are rules in my courtroom. We can't just—" "Please," Lily interrupted, her voice breaking. "Just let me talk. I went to the legal clinic. They said sometimes judges listen to victims. Well, I'm a victim too. If you take my mom away, you're punishing me too. And I didn't do anything wrong." The courtroom fell silent. Monica watched, her heart in her throat, as Judge Thompson considered Lily's words. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "Young lady, you've shown a great deal of courage coming here today. While this is highly unusual, I'm inclined to hear what you have to say. But first, I need to make sure this is okay with your mother and the attorneys. Ms. Thompson." Monica nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "Very well," Judge Thompson continued. "Lily, please approach the bench, and someone get this child a glass of water." As Lily stepped forward, Monica caught Greenberg's eye. He looked as shocked as she felt, but there was also a glimmer of something else in his expression. Hope. For the next few minutes, the courtroom listened in rapt silence as Lily spoke. She talked about the missed meals, the nights she pretended to be asleep so her mom wouldn't worry. She described the day at the store, how she had seen the fear in her mother's eyes, and she spoke of love, fierce, unconditional love that had carried them through the hardest times. As Lily finished, wiping tears from her cheeks, Judge Thompson leaned back in his chair. His expression was thoughtful, his eyes moving from Lily to Monica and back again. "Thank you, Lily," he said finally. "You've given me a lot to think about. We'll take a brief recess, and then I'll announce my decision." As the bailiff led Lily back to Eleanor, Monica felt a surge of emotions, fear, pride, and above all, a renewed determination. Whatever happened next, she knew that Lily's bravery had changed everything. For the first time since this ordeal began, Monica dared to hope. The recess seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Monica sat rigid in her chair, her eyes fixed on Lily, who was now seated with Eleanor in the gallery. Her daughter's unexpected appearance had thrown the entire proceedings into disarray, and Monica's emotions swirled in a tumultuous mix of pride, fear, and overwhelming love. As the bailiff called the court back to order, Judge Thompson returned to his seat. His face was inscrutable, but there was a new intensity in his gaze as he surveyed the courtroom. "Before I render my decision," he began, his voice measured and deliberate, "I'd like to hear from Ms. Thompson herself." He turned his piercing blue eyes directly on Monica. "Ms. Thompson, please approach the bench." Monica stood on shaky legs, feeling the weight of every eye in the courtroom upon her. As she walked forward, she caught a glimpse of Lily's encouraging nod. Drawing strength from her daughter's courage, Monica took a deep breath and faced the judge. "Ms. Thompson," Judge Thompson said, his tone softer than before, "your daughter's words have given us a new perspective on your situation. Now I want to hear from you, not legal arguments or prepared statements. I want the truth, in your own words. Why did you do it?" Monica's mind raced. She had rehearsed explanations and apologies countless times. But now, faced with this direct question, all her prepared words fell away. Instead, she found herself speaking from the heart. "Your Honor," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I did it because I failed." She paused, swallowing hard against the lump in her throat. I failed as a mother, as a provider. I watched my daughter grow thinner, saw the worry in her eyes every time I said we couldn't afford something. I applied for jobs, for assistance, for anything that could help us, but nothing came through fast enough. She glanced back at Lily, drawing strength from her daughter's presence. That day in the store, I saw the baby food, and I thought of all the nights Lily had gone to bed hungry. I couldn't bear it anymore. I know it was wrong. I know I should have found another way. But in that moment, all I could think about was filling my daughter's stomach. Tears welled in Monica's eyes, but she blinked them back, determined to finish. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Your Honor. What I did was wrong, and I'm prepared to face the consequences. But please, whatever you decide, don't punish Lily for my mistakes. She's a good kid, smart and kind. She deserves better than what I've been able to give her. The courtroom was silent as Monica finished speaking. She stood there, feeling exposed and vulnerable, but also oddly relieved. For the first time since this ordeal began, she felt like someone was truly seeing her, not as a case number or a statistic, but as a human being, flawed and struggling, but trying her best. Judge Thompson's expression remained neutral, but there was a softness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Thank you, Ms. Thompson," he said quietly. "You may be seated." As Monica returned to her chair, she felt Greenberg squeeze her arm supportively. The prosecutor, however, was already on her feet. "Your Honor," she began, her voice sharp. "While Ms. Thompson's story is certainly emotional, it doesn't change the facts of the case. The law is clear." "Thank you, Counselor," Judge Thompson interrupted, holding up a hand. "I'm well aware of what the law says, but the law also grants judges discretion in sentencing, particularly in cases where there are mitigating circumstances." He paused, his gaze sweeping the courtroom before settling back on Monica. "Ms. Thompson," he continued, "your actions were indeed illegal, and there must be consequences. However, I believe that justice is not served by tearing a family apart when there are alternatives available." He leaned forward, his tone becoming more personal. "I see before me not a hardened criminal, but a mother who made a desperate choice in a moment of crisis. I see a woman who, by all accounts, has been a loving and devoted parent despite difficult circumstances." Monica hardly dared to breathe, scarcely able to believe what she was hearing. Beside her, she could feel Greenberg tensing in anticipation. "Therefore," Judge Thompson continued, "I am sentencing you to 2 years of probation, during which time you will complete 200 hours of community service. Additionally, you will be required to attend financial management classes and participate in a job training program." A collective gasp went through the courtroom. Monica felt lightheaded, the judge's words echoing in her ears. Probation, not prison. She would be going home. But Judge Thompson wasn't finished. "Furthermore," he added, his voice cutting through the murmurs in the courtroom, "I am ordering the court to assign a social worker to your case. They will assist you in accessing resources, food banks, job placement services, and any other support you may need to get back on your feet." He paused, making sure he had Monica's full attention. "Ms. Thompson, I'm giving you this chance because I believe in second chances, and because I believe that the best place for a child is with a parent who loves them. Don't make me regret this decision." "No, Your Honor," Monica managed to say, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you. I won't let you down." As Judge Thompson banged his gavel, concluding the proceedings, the courtroom erupted in a buzz of conversation. Monica turned to Greenberg, who was grinning broadly. "Congratulations," he said, shaking her hand. "It's not often we see an outcome like this. You should be proud." But Monica was already looking past him, her eyes seeking out Lily. As their gazes met across the courtroom, Monica saw her own joy and relief mirrored in her daughter's face. In that moment, all the fear and uncertainty of the past weeks melted away, replaced by a fierce determination. This was her second chance, not just at freedom, but at being the mother Lily deserved. As she walked towards her daughter, Monica silently vowed to make the most of it. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Lily by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges came their way. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Judge Robert Thompson remained seated at the bench, his mind replaying the events that had just unfolded. In his 20 years on the bench, He had seen countless cases, heard innumerable pleas, but something about Monica Thompson and her daughter Lily had struck a chord deep within him. He thought back to the moment Lily had burst into the courtroom, her small voice filled with a conviction that belied her years. It had been unorthodox, even disruptive, but there had been an authenticity to her words that cut through the usual courtroom rhetoric. As the last of the spectators filed out, Judge Thompson rose and retreated to his chambers. The wood-paneled room, with its walls of law books and the faint scent of leather and old paper, had always been a sanctuary of sorts. Today, however, it felt different. The weight of the decision he had just made sat heavily on his shoulders. Sinking into his chair, he closed his eyes, allowing his mind to drift. Unbidden, memories of his own childhood surfaced. Memories he had long since buried beneath years of legal training and judicial impartiality. He saw himself as a young boy, watching his mother count out coins at the grocery store, the shame in her eyes as she put items back on the shelves. He remembered the gnawing hunger, the hand-me-down clothes, the constant fear of eviction. His mother had never resorted to theft, but Robert knew it had been a near thing many times. Opening his eyes, Judge Thompson's gaze fell on a framed photograph on his desk. It showed a much younger version of himself, fresh out of law school, standing proudly next to his mother. Her face beamed with pride, all the years of hardship momentarily forgotten in that triumph. "What would you think of my decision today, Mom?" he murmured to the photograph. He had built his career on being tough but fair, on upholding the letter of the law. But today, faced with Monica and Lily Thompson, he had seen beyond the black and white of legal statutes. He had seen the gray areas, the human struggles that the law, in its rigid framework, often failed to account for. A soft knock at the door interrupted his reverie. "Come in," he called out. His clerk, a young woman named Jessica, entered with a stack of files. "The case is for tomorrow, Your Honor," she said, placing them on his desk. She hesitated for a moment, then added, "That was quite a sentence you handed down today." Judge Thompson studied her face, noting the mix of surprise and admiration in her expression. "Do you think I made the right call, Jessica?" Jessica considered the question carefully before responding. "I think you saw the person behind the case, sir. That's not always easy to do." As Jessica left, closing the door softly behind her, Judge Thompson turned back to the window. The Chicago skyline stretched out before him, a maze of buildings and streets, each hiding countless stories like Monica's. He thought about the resources he had ordered for the Thompson family, the social worker, the job training, the financial management classes. It wasn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. It was a lifeline, a chance for a family to rebuild. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine the ripple effects of his decision. Monica, armed with new skills and support, finding stable employment. Lily, growing up with her mother, free from the trauma of separation. And perhaps, years down the line, a community strengthened by a family that had been given a second chance rather than torn apart. Of course, there would be criticism. The prosecutor had been visibly displeased with the ruling, and there would undoubtedly be those who felt he had been too lenient. But as he reflected on the day's events, Judge Thompson felt a sense of peace settling over him. He had not ignored the law. He had applied it with wisdom and compassion. He had seen not just the crime but the circumstances that led to it, and he had sought a solution that served true justice, not just punishment, but rehabilitation and hope. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across his office, Judge Thompson turned back to his desk. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new challenges. But today, he felt he had made a difference, not just in the lives of Monica and Lily Thompson, but perhaps in his own approach to justice. Picking up the first file for tomorrow's docket, he began to read, a new perspective coloring his interpretation of the facts before him. The scales of justice, he realized, were not just about balance, but about seeing the full weight of human experience on both sides. With this renewed sense of purpose, Judge Robert Thompson prepared for another day in court, ready to uphold not just the letter of the law, but its spirit as well. The early morning sun streamed through the windows of the small apartment, casting a warm glow over Monica and Lily as they sat at their tiny kitchen table. It had been 3 months since that fateful day in court, and while life was far from perfect, there was a newfound sense of hope that seemed to permeate every corner of their home. Monica sipped her coffee, watching as Lily happily munched on her cereal. The sight of her daughter eating a full meal without worry was something Monica would never take for granted again. "Mom," Lily said between bites, "are you nervous about today?" Monica smiled, reaching out to smooth a stray lock of Lily's hair. "A little," she admitted. "But excited too. It's a new start for us." Today marked Monica's first day at her new job, a position as an administrative assistant at a local community center. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, with benefits and room for growth. The job had come through the training program Judge Thompson had ordered as part of her probation, and Monica was determined to make the most of this opportunity. As they finished breakfast and prepared to leave, Lily to school, Monica to work. There was a knock at the door. Monica opened it to find Mrs. Castillo, their elderly neighbor, smiling warmly. "Just wanted to wish you luck on your first day, dear," Mrs. Castillo said, pressing a small package into Monica's hands. A little something to celebrate new beginnings. Touched, Monica unwrapped the package to find a beautiful, if slightly worn, scarf. "It was mine when I first came to this country," Mrs. Castillo explained. "For luck and new starts, now it's yours." Monica's eyes welled with tears as she hugged her neighbor. The kindness and support of people like Mrs. Castillo had been a lifeline over the past months, reminding her that she wasn't alone in this journey. As they walked to the bus stop, Lily's small hand clasped tightly in hers, Monica reflected on the changes in their lives. The financial management classes had opened her eyes to budgeting techniques she'd never known before. The community service hours, which she'd initially dreaded, had introduced her to a network of local organizations and resources she never knew existed. But more than anything, it was the shift in her own mindset that amazed her. Where once she had felt trapped and hopeless, she now saw possibilities. It wasn't easy. There were still bills to juggle, and the stigma of her arrest sometimes felt like a weight she'd never fully shake. But for the first time in years, Monica felt like she was moving forward rather than just treading water. At the bus stop, Monica knelt down to Lily's level. "You remember the plan for after school?" she asked. Lily nodded solemnly. "Mrs. Castillo will pick me up, and we'll have snack and do homework until you get home." "That's right," Monica said, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, Lily. You know that, right? You're the bravest, smartest girl I know." As the school bus approached, Lily gave her mother one last squeeze. "Good luck, Mom," she said. "You're gonna do great." Watching the bus pull away, Monica took a deep breath, fingering the soft fabric of Mrs. Castillo's scarf. She thought about Judge Thompson, about the chance he had taken on her. She thought about Greenberg, who still checked in occasionally to see how they were doing. And she thought about Lily, whose courage and love had changed everything. As her own bus arrived, Monica straightened her shoulders and stepped forward. This was more than just a new job. It was a new chapter in their lives. There would be challenges ahead, she knew. The path of redemption was rarely smooth, but for the first time in a long time, Monica felt ready to face whatever came their way. She found a seat, gazing out the window as the city came to life around her. The morning sun glinted off windows and windshields, turning the world into a canvas of possibility. Monica closed her eyes for a moment, offering a silent prayer of gratitude. Then, as the bus lurched forward, carrying her towards her new beginning, Monica Thompson opened her eyes and faced the future with hope, determination, and the unshakable knowledge that she was not alone. The journey ahead might be long, but with Lily by her side and a community of support behind her, she was ready to take it one step at a time. 1 year later, the Cook County Courthouse stood bathed in the warm glow of a late summer afternoon. Inside, in a small conference room away from the bustle of the main corridors, an unusual gathering was taking place. Judge Robert Thompson sat at the head of the table, his normally stern features softened by a smile. To his right sat Monica Thompson, looking polished and confident in a simple but elegant blouse. Beside her was Lily, now 8 years old, her eyes bright with curiosity as she took in the room full of adults. "Thank you all for coming," Judge Thompson began, his gaze sweeping over the assembled group of lawyers, social workers, and community leaders. "We're here today to discuss the progress of our Community Justice Initiative, and I can think of no better way to start than by hearing from the woman who inspired it all." He nodded to Monica, who took a deep breath before speaking. "A year ago, I stood in this very courthouse, certain that my life and my daughter's was over. Instead, It was a new beginning. Her voice, once timid in this setting, now rang clear and confident. The support and resources I received didn't just help me, they showed me how to help others. Over the next hour, Monica shared her journey, from the job training program that led to her current position as a community outreach coordinator, to the financial literacy classes she now helped teach to other struggling parents. She spoke of the ripple effects, how her story had inspired local businesses to create second-chance hiring programs, and how the court's approach to her case had sparked a county-wide review of sentencing guidelines for non-violent offenses. As Monica concluded her presentation, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Judge Thompson, visibly moved, stood to address the group. What we're seeing here is more than just one family's success story. It's a testament to what can happen when we approach justice with compassion and foresight. He went on to outline the expansion of the Community Justice Initiative, more comprehensive support for first-time offenders, partnerships with local businesses and educational institutions, and a mentorship program that paired past participants like Monica with those just entering the system. As the meeting concluded and people began to file out, Lily tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, her eyes shining, "do you think I could be a judge someday? Like Judge Thompson?" Monica smiled, her heart swelling with pride and hope. "You can be anything you want to be, sweetheart. Anything at all." Later, as they walked down the courthouse steps, Monica paused, looking back at the imposing building. Once a place of fear and judgment, it now represented something different. A turning point, a second chance, a community coming together to redefine justice. With Lily's hand in hers, Monica turned towards home, towards a future bright with possibility. The path ahead was still long, with challenges yet to face. But with each step, with each life touched by their story, the whisper of justice was growing into a chorus of change, a testament to the power of compassion, second chances, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. What did you think of the story? Please leave a comment with your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm sure there will be new videos on this channel that will surprise you. Give it a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our next videos. See you soon.